General Hospital spoilers indicate that Willow Tate may be arrested and imprisoned for her recent crimes against Daisy Celeste. So let's speak about the major expose and the ramifications Willow may face. Daisy has been suspected of having a stalker ever since she was born. From Sasha Corbin being given the wrong kid at the hospital to the new mother discovering the infant in a different onesie, fans knew someone was watching over a child who shouldn't be. Many GH viewers' concerns were verified during the Tuesday, July 8th episode, when it was discovered that Willow Tate was not only keeping an eye on Daisy from afar, but also removing her out of her crib and taking her for walks. Willow politely reminded Daisy that she was unhappy with Sasha Corbin for betraying her and Michael Corinthos for kidnapping her children, and that it was time for them to feel her pain. Willow's mental health has deteriorated after she lost full custody of Wiley and Amelia Corinthos, as seen on GH. Michael was granted sole guardianship of the children, which Willow has found difficult to accept. She has not only pursued Daisy, but she has also purposefully attempted to run into Michael and Wiley at the Metro Court pool, which is utterly out of character for her, and violates the judge's order. At the end of the day, while Willow's heart is broken, she is also breaching a number of important laws as she spirals emotionally. First and foremost, she should not be near Daisy, let alone lift her from her crib. Plus, even visiting the Quartermaine mansion without permission may land her in serious trouble. While some believe Sasha has postpartum troubles, looking at you, Olivia Quartermaine, the new mom will initially be accused of mental health issues, but the truth will soon be revealed. So what happens if it does? Surely, neither Michael nor Sasha will let Willow get away with this, and they will punish her to the fullest extent of the law. It doesn't help that Sasha is a Scorpio, and her uncle Max Scorpio also leads the Port Charles police force. Even if Sasha and Michael want to go soft on Willow because she is Daisy's sibling's mother, Mac will not allow it. However, there is also the issue of mental health. Willow is definitely not doing well, and some GH fans suspect she has dissociative identity disorder. This would explain Willow's recent unusual conduct. If Willow is diagnosed with DID once the truth is revealed, she may be sent to Ferncliff instead of prison. According to General Hospital spoilers, Willow will have to pay for her heinous crimes against Daisy, Sasha, and Michael, so whether she goes to jail or a facility, she will be isolated from her children, Wiley and Amelia, for quite some time. According to General Hospital spoilers, the 4th of July fireworks in Port Charles masked a chilling crime earlier this week, when Sasha Gilmore Corbin's newborn daughter, Daisy Corinthos Gilmore, vanished from her crib at the Quartermaine mansion, and Willow Corinthos appears to be the spark that is igniting Sasha's world. Willow, devastated by her recent custody loss to Michael Corinthos, is a top suspect in Daisy's kidnapping, though no one has connected the dots yet. As Sasha struggles with postpartum anxiety, tormented by her previous loss of Liam Mike Corbin, Willow's actions, whether motivated by sadness or vengeance, threaten to destroy Sasha. Was July 4th only the start of Willow's disastrous path? Or is there more to this fiery story? Willow's grief turns deadly? Willow's anguish, worsened by Drew Quartermaine's lies and scheming, which she has yet to completely confront, could have pushed her to snap, kidnapping Daisy during the holiday commotion to fill the emptiness left by her lost children. Fans speculate that Willow is even crazier than the writers portray Sasha to be. Sasha's discovery of the empty crib, compounded by a hospital mix-up with Daisy, sends her into a tailspin every time she replays the incident in her memory. Are Willow's activities going to cause a permanent schism, or is she only a scapegoat for a darker force? Sasha's world burns as suspicions mount. Sasha's postpartum anxiety, as evidenced in tearful pleas to Michael at the boathouse this week, threatens to plunge her into despair if she begins to suspect Willow, whose custody loss echoes her own. The timing, days after Willow's engagement to Drew, encourages speculation that she is lashing out to hurt Michael, who is starting a family with Sasha. If Carly Spencer or Nina Reeves discover a clue, it could point to Willow, but Sasha's worries about her own sanity may blind her to logic. Will Willow's fire consume Sasha's hope? Or will she persevere for Daisy's sake? General Hospital spoilers. Willow's fiery plan for Sasha started on July 4th. A fire that could engulf Port Charles. Willow's probable culpability could destroy everyone she cares about, even her children if they are caught up in the aftermath. Furthermore, Willow's plan to frighten Sasha may become a much longer game if she discovers that the effect she had on the new mother was much more concerning and long-lasting, implying that Willow may have the ability to force Sasha to spiral into postpartum depression. Some fans believe Willow has gone too far. What camp are you in? Does Sasha deserve this after sleeping with Michael and sticking by him? Is Willow losing her grasp on reality now? Will July 4th be the beginning of Willow's destruction of Sasha's life? Or will the truth come to light and turn against her? Stay tuned for more GH updates and spoilers to discover out. General Hospital spoilers are available for Thursday, July 10, 2025. In the upcoming episode, Michael Corinthos will attempt to broker a deal with Sasha Gilmore. Carly Spencer attempts damage control. In addition, Drew Kane receives valuable information. Continue reading and let's discuss what's coming up on the ABC soap show. Michael Corinthos' idea fans watched as Michael told Sasha that he thinks someone is playing with her mind. That made the mother want to leave Port Charles. However, Michael refused to let her depart with Daisy Gilmore Corinthos. Michael recommended increasing security, but this won't make her feel any better. Perhaps Michael will advise that she temporarily move into Carly's home with the baby? Over with Kai Taylor, Curtis Ashford gives him a lesson. In a teaser for tomorrow's show, Curtis sternly reminds the young man that he is intruding in matters he does not comprehend. Kai seemed to be sincerely striving to do the right thing. How will Kai react once he learns what type of man Drew truly is? Drew Kane's powerful intel. General Hospital spoilers for tomorrow's episode suggest that Drew meets with someone and asks, "You got anything for me?" We know Drew acquires significant advantage on an adversary. I'm wondering whether this has anything to do with Jacinda agreeing to return to PC, but then bailing at the last minute. Could Drew's people have stopped Jacinda on her way back to town? On Thursday, July 10, 2025, fans will see Stella Henry impart wisdom to Portia Robinson. Portia's statements will not be believed by Jordan Ashford. Marco Rios issues a strong warning. Marco warns someone that he will take legal action as Lucas Jones waits by and listens. However, Marco is unaware that Sonny has directed Jason Morgan to carry out his vindictive scheme. Meanwhile, Carly attempts to argue with Sonny Corinthos about his risky retribution plan. Emma Scorpio Drake also asks Jocelyn Jacks some questions. Is Emma falling for Joss and Vaughn's staged breakup? For some reason, I don't believe Emma is as naive as they claim. Willow's arrest sent shockwaves across Port Charles. No one could have anticipated that the sweet, soft-spoken woman so many had grown to respect would be carried away in handcuffs, her expression unreadable as the police marched her through the station. Those who knew her well struggled to reconcile the lady they thought they knew with the accusation set out in such detail. The charges were harsh, terrible, and difficult to comprehend. Deliberate cruelty committed against Daisy Kwan, a former cult follower attempting to rebuild her life. However, as the story progressed, it became evident that nothing in Port Charles is ever straightforward. The tension had been building for several weeks. Daisy had returned to town beneath the radar, determined to make atonement for her past mistakes and forge a fresh way forward. She had been discreetly working with a local charity to assist at-risk youngsters, seeking to keep out of the spotlight. For a while it appeared that she would succeed. However, secrets have a way of surfacing, especially in a place like Port Charles, where everyone's history remains like a shadow waiting to extend into the present. Daisy and Willow cross paths again. But what began as awkwardness quickly evolved into something far more deadly behind closed doors. According to those familiar with the matter, Daisy began documenting a pattern of harassment that appeared to be targeted at shattering her spirit. At first, it was merely strange encounters, Willow turning up at her office, standing silently nearby, or making subtle remarks that others ignored. However, the instances became increasingly targeted, with slashed tires, threatening letters left in her mailbox, and finally, a violent encounter at the community center where both women had previously volunteered. Daisy had bruises and a quivering voice when she spoke to the authorities, but her claims were unequivocal. She pointed to Willow, the former schoolteacher, mother, and purportedly redeemed lady whose past suffering had earned her sympathy in so many eyes. The police conducted an inquiry, and what they discovered alarmed even experienced cops. Willow was captured on surveillance tape near Daisy's car on the night her tires were destroyed. Willow's calligraphy was found to be consistent with the messages using handwriting analysis. Witnesses grudgingly came forward to recount frightening talks they'd had with Willow, moments when her placid exterior gave way to a darker edge. The district attorney's office believed they had sufficient evidence to charge her. The arrest came quickly. Michael was completely caught off guard. He had supported Willow throughout her cancer treatment, her poor relationships with Nina and Carly, and her devotion to their children. But this was something altogether else. Willow did not dispute being booked and placed in a holding cell. She merely asked to speak with her lawyer and stayed silent. No crying or outbursts, just peaceful acceptance, as if she had been waiting for the past to catch up with her. Some thought it was guilt, while others saw it as resolution. Regardless, the woman who had formerly served as a moral compass in so many people's lives was now facing the brutal reality of incarceration. In the days that followed, speculation became wild. Was it conceivable that Willow had snapped as a result of her illness, strained marriage, and the emotional turmoil of the previous year? Or had Daisy staged the entire incident out of spite, vengeance, or mental instability? Journalists flooded the courthouse, hoping to catch a glimpse of Willow as she was transported to county jail. The sight of her in the orange jumpsuit tormented Michael's sleep. He could not make sense of it. He remembered Willow holding Wiley with her eyes full of affection. The woman who talked softly and pushed for compassion could not have been the same person accused of methodically tormenting someone. However, not everyone was surprised. Nina Reeves, who was still striving to form a meaningful relationship with her estranged daughter-in-law, took the arrest as a sign that she may have been correct all along. In a quiet moment, she told Sunny that she had always sensed something beneath Willow's calm exterior. A cold and cutting edge. Carly, on the other hand, wouldn't believe it. She stood in Willow's defense, claiming that someone was framing her, and that the accusations couldn't be real. Even she had to acknowledge that the evidence was piling. Willow attempted to stay to herself within the jail. Her cellmate was Valentina, a harsh and skeptical lady who initially looked at Willow as if she were fresh meat. Willow's demeanor, however, put her off guard. They only spoke when necessary, and while the other convicts were intrigued by the cult survivor turned psycho teacher, no one dared to push too hard. Willow lowered her head, her thoughts looping in on themselves. How had things gotten to this? She remembered Daisy from the days of Dawn of Day, the blind adoration in her eyes, and the frantic want to belong. Willow once pitied her. Daisy's pity evolved to disdain when she failed to recognize Shiloh's depravity. Willow assumed she'd never have to face that portion of her life again once everything fell apart, and the truth about the cult's abuse became publicized. Daisy's reappearance, however, revealed past grief, unresolved anger, and possibly something Willow had not entirely dealt with. A deep-seated rage that simmered beneath her placid exterior. In the court of popular opinion, lines were drawn. Some saw Willow as a victim of her past, someone who had been pushed too far. Others saw her as a phony, a lady hiding behind motherhood and tenderness while plotting vengeance. The judge ordered a mental evaluation, which is typical procedure given the severity of the accusations. The results were inconclusive. Willow displayed evidence of emotional trauma and anxiety, but was found able to stand trial. The court date loomed and Michael was torn. Should he support the lady he loves or detach himself to shield Wiley and Amelia from the consequences? Brooke Lynn attempted to interfere, appealing with Michael not to desert Willow when she needed him the most. Even she hesitated to believe what the cops had discovered. Sasha provided quiet support, knowing better than anybody what it felt like to spiral under strain. Still, she maintained her distance. This was not about grieving or addiction. It was about intentional, personal brutality. The type of behavior that cannot be explained away with a sob story. Daisy, for her part, maintained a low profile. She did one brief interview in which she expressed her anguish about Willow's imprisonment and stated that she never wanted it to come to this. However, her voice trembled as she recalled the fear that had gripped her in recent months. She described waking up at night to find letters put under her door, her tires ruined, and her mailbox loaded with bizarre tokens. She did not accuse Willow directly again, but the implication hovered in the air like fog. Willow sat stone-faced throughout the first hearing, her hands clutched in her lap while the charges were read. Michael sat in the back, barely able to see her. When their eyes finally met, there was no accusation or anger, only a profound melancholy that hung between them like a wall. The prosecution argued against bail, stressing the gravity of the offenses and concerns that Willow would continue her campaign if released. Her defense attorney, Diane Miller, said that the case was based on circumstantial evidence and witness testimony that could be easily contested. Ultimately, the judge imposed a high bail, and Willow was freed under severe house arrest, monitored, and barred from contacting Daisy or any possible witnesses. She went home to an alien environment, with the warmth and familiarity of family life replaced by anxiety and strain. Wiley asked questions that she didn't know how to answer. Amelia clutched to her more tightly than usual, sensing something was off. Michael moved into the guest home, stating a need for space to process everything. Carly dropped by with food and support, but her faith was shaken. "Tell me you didn't do this," she said quietly one night as they sat in the kitchen. Willow's quiet was deafening. She did not refute it. She just answered, "I didn't think it would go this far." It wasn't precisely a confession, but it made Carly worry what else Willow was hiding. Willow's world shrank in the weeks leading up to the trial date. She spent her days reading, supervising the children, and preparing for her case. She said little, even to her legal team. Diane advised her that quiet could be interpreted as guilt, but Willow insisted on time to contemplate. The court of law would decide her fate, but the court of public opinion had already made its decision. And yet, beyond the scandal and murmurs, a deeper truth began to emerge. Daisy's mental health, timeline anomalies, and the chance that someone else was involved all sparked concerns. A former cult member was seen near the community center the night of the assault. A second set of fingerprints was found on the threatening letters. Suddenly, the case seemed less straightforward. Willow felt hopeful for the first time since her arrest. Perhaps she doesn't have to shoulder this alone. Perhaps someone else had been feeding the fire, manipulating both her and Daisy for motives unknown. Maybe the past wasn't over for any of them, and they were just pawns in a larger game. But regardless of the conclusion, one thing was certain. Port Charles would never look at Willow the same way again. Whether she was acquitted or convicted, the harm was done. The quiet, kind woman who had previously stood for healing now stood on the verge of something much darker. And no matter how the trial came out, a piece of her would remain in that detention cell, trapped in the realm where sorrow turned to rage and silence turned to scars. Carly never backs down from a challenge, and today was no exception. The tension had been building for weeks, and she could no longer hold back. With the weight of Sunny's recent issues hanging over Port Charles and the fractures in her personal life ready to burst open, she knew something had to give. That something, it turned out, would be her tolerance. Drew had been pushing discreetly but constantly since his release, always trying to go ahead, always manipulating behind the scenes, and Carly had had enough. She cornered him at the Metro Court, in full view of inquisitive bystanders, and gave a warning so quick and furious that Drew appeared astonished. She did not yell. She did not need to. Her voice was icy, steady, and unwavering, indicating that she understood what he was up to. She noticed how he was aligning himself with the Quartermaines again, discreetly pressing Michael and even attempting to get closer to Willow. Carly did not believe in coincidences, especially when Drew was involved. She warned him that if he even breathed on Michael's future, or attempted to use him as a pawn in some perverted post-prison power grab, she would destroy everything. She wasn't lying. She never did. Drew stood his ground. Carly's stare did not make him flinch. He reminded her that he had equal claim to the Quartermaine legacy as everyone else. He told her outright that he was tired of playing second fiddle, of everyone assuming he was the calmer twin, the safer pick, the one who never got filthy. Those days are gone. Prison had transformed him. He made it plain that he was not scared to use what he had. That is where the leverage came in. Drew possessed knowledge that was damaging, specific, and perhaps hazardous. Something like this may make or break folks in Port Charles. It wasn't only corporate secrets either. It was personal. Carly knew it the moment he leaned close and mentioned a name. Nina. Drew knew something Carly had buried so deeply that she believed it would never rise again. And now it was on the table. He had not spoken it out, but the threat was implied. If Carly refused to back down, if she continued to interfere with his ambitions for ELQ or his status with the family, he would not hesitate to reveal anything. Carly's stomach twisted. Not from fear but from rage. How dare he? How can Drew, of all people, attempt to influence her? They'd shared and been through too much together. She had protected him while others had doubted. She had supported him through the most difficult times of his prison sentence. And now he is threatening her? Over what? Control? Status? Respect? Her heart bled from betrayal, but she hid it well. She glared him down and promised that if he followed through on his threats, he'd lose more than just her, Michael, Willow, and Scout. Because once he started down that road, there was no turning back. But Michael was the true variable in this situation. Still suffering from Sunny's demise and torn between loyalty and self-preservation, Michael was drawn into yet more high-stakes negotiations. On the one hand, he wanted to believe Drew still has some integrity. On the other hand, he could sense Carly's anxiety and saw through Drew's politicking. So he made his own move. Michael approached Drew quietly and strategically, not as a pawn but as a participant. He proposed a bargain. Michael agreed to support Drew's efforts at ELQ on one condition. Leave Carly out of this. Don't touch her, don't threaten her, and don't dwell on the past. If Drew could respect that line, Michael would use his own power to assist calm Ned, who was already becoming agitated. It was hardly a full endorsement, but it was sufficient. Enough to persuade Drew to back down temporarily. Michael still didn't trust him. That anxiety remained with him as he walked away from their meeting. Something was shifting. Drew was not the same person that left for Pentonville. He was hungrier and colder, perhaps even more harmful. And that really disturbed Michael. Especially with Willow working so hard to keep the peace, so anxious to believe everyone could go on. Michael questioned whether that was still conceivable. Meanwhile, in another part of Port Charles, Curtis Ashford was in a downward spiral. The discoveries concerning the Metro Court shooting, his paralysis, Jordan's failed promises, and the secrecy surrounding Sunny's illicit links had been too much for too long. He'd attempted to retain his cool. He had attempted to be the calm in the storm. But Curtis had a limit, and today he reached it. It began as a casual talk with Portia, but quickly escalated. They were supposed to discuss Trina's plans, her future, her internship, but Curtis couldn't keep the bitterness out of his voice. Everything she said seemed like a deflection, a tactic to skirt the fundamental issues between them. Curtis' animosity had escalated into something volatile. He accused Portia of hiding secrets and of constantly attempting to manage him, rather than actually supporting him. He stated that he felt obligated like a project, not a husband. Portia snapped back. She, too, was exhausted. Exhausted from carrying the family's emotional burden, and from witnessing Curtis drown in his own sorrow without seeking help. They shouted. Trina overheard. It was ugly. Years of suppressed emotion erupted in that living room, and at the end, Curtis was the one walking out, wheeling himself out, with a smack on the front door that shook its frame. But it did not end there. Curtis headed directly to the Savoy. It was vacant during the day, with only a few employees preparing for the night. He told them to go. Then he sat in the club's solitude, surrounded by no music and no lights, and allowed it all to sink in. The treachery, the fear, the wrath. Most importantly, however, is the seclusion. He punched the bar hard. His hand throbbed, but it did not matter. The ache made him feel alive. That was more than he could say on most days recently. Curtis placed a call as the sun sank. Not to Portia or Trina. He called Marshall. His father picked up, astonished, perhaps even optimistic. Curtis didn't say much, save that he needed to see him. Soon. Something in his tone must have given Marshall pause, since he didn't hesitate. He answered, yes. He would be there. Back at Metro Court, Carly sat alone, sipping her third coffee of the day and attempting to gather her thoughts. Her interaction with Drew had left her shaken. Not because she was concerned about what he may do, but because she understood how greatly she had underestimated him. And this scared her. Carly had always depended on staying one step ahead. But now the game has changed. She wasn't even sure which pieces were still on the board. She considered contacting Sunny, but stopped herself. That bridge was more than burned. It was charred ground. Jason was still a ghost. She felt the weight of the conflict she was preparing for, and how isolated she might be in it. But that did not mean she would give up. No matter what Drew tried, how angry Curtis felt, or how cautious Michael was, Carly would defend her family. She always did. Drew sat in the Quartermain study across town, staring at Scout's framed photo. He knew Carly loathed him right now. He disliked himself a little too. However, he could not afford to soften. Not anymore. The world had taught him the hard way that people only valued power. And for the first time in a long time he believed he might finally have some. Even if it meant losing everything else. Curtis, Michael, Carly, and Drew were all unraveling in their own unique ways, stuck in their own maelstrom. But the skies above Port Charles were only getting darker. And the real thunder hadn't even struck yet. At the gallery, Ava introduces Joel Sartor, whose new book inspired the latest display. Joel thanks Ava and Trina for welcoming him back and discusses his latest book, which focuses on infant animals. Ava and Rick talk about GH. Cody accidentally spills his drink on Liz, and Rick hurries over to rescue. Ava fumes and mumbles to herself, saying he can't take his hands off her. Cody then takes Ava away to talk. Trina appreciates Joss and Joe's visit. When they question where Kai is, Trina responds that Drew must have kept him working late. At the Metro Court pool, Ezra meets with Drew and offers him everything he needs to score a hit on Sunny and Laura. What did Stella do? Laura picks up Martin from the hospital, and he complains that Tracy is to blame for his back problems. She cautions him that going to war with Tracy will result in no one winning. She tells him to focus on his recuperation. Marco arrives and meets Lucas, who returns his mother's personal items. Marco believes Sunny is to blame for his mother's death, regardless of what the police or autopsy findings say. Portia and Stella discuss the gallery show, and Curtis hasn't notified Portia whether he'll be attending or not. She acknowledges they're having troubles. Stella says they need to remember what they mean to one another. Stella sees Martin with Laura, and Martin refers to her as his medical bill savior. She informs him that they must speak in private. They go somewhere to talk, and Martin expresses his gratitude to Stella for helping him get his insurance reinstated. She tells him to keep it low, because what she did might land them both in trouble. Ezra makes a scene. Ezra enters, expresses his condolences to Marco, and promises to do all in his power to bring Sunny down for his mother's death. Suddenly, the press arrives and asks Marco if his mother was laundering money for Sunny, and if he has any comments on her murder. Ezra takes advantage of the publicity, while Marco maintains his mother's death was tragic. Laura walks around the corner, and the cameras focus on her when Ezra asks if she will condemn Sunny for Natalia Ramirez's killing. Laura claims the issue has been closed, and she will not sling mud at him in front of a bereaved family member. Ezra turns to Marco and asks whether he is aware that the PCPD held Sunny for up to 24 hours following his mother's murder. Marco warns Ezra that he will not allow him to politicize his mother's death, and that if he continues to harass him, he would take legal action. Later, Marco informs Laura that he knows what sort of guy Ezra is, but he also says, "Shame on you," for thinking of Sunny as a friend, as he blames him for his mother's murder. Michael calls for help at Sunny's. Carly cries at him that their children's lives are in danger as a result of the war with Sidwell. They cannot continue retaliating or someone will die. At the Q's boathouse, Michael informs Sasha that she and Daisy cannot go on their own because it is unsafe. She wonders what he'll do. Hire her a bodyguard? Michael had a better idea. Michael phones Jason and arranges to meet him at the boathouse. Jason leaves Sunny's house and Carly encourages him to admit it. When Jason stated Michael was on the phone, his heart stopped. Sunny warns Carly that Sidwell must face the repercussions of his actions, or their children would be in much greater risk.